All the stuff that I discuss is a way to pretty much safeguard yourself from one of, I would say, arguably one of the most dangerous things about the human condition. One of the most dangerous things. I'll pause here. If anyone an interest to thinking what their version or what their thoughts about the most dangerous thing is. And then I'll share with you what I think. And I'm curious of how many people actually think about what I'm thinking. But one of the most dangerous things to humans' well-being in general is becoming bored. So much of so many things is tied to the idea of being bored. You might be thinking, well, that's an exaggeration. I'm bored all the time. All right, describe. Why are you bored? What could you be doing if you're bored? Like, when you tell me you're bored, it tells me you're not doing anything. Nothing that keeps you entertained. Like, you have no value for your time. You can't find value in your time to get yourself excited. It's the root of so many things. It causes someone to not stop living their lives. It causes them to entrap themselves in the past when the good times were, or be pessimistic about nothing in the future. There's so many things that are rooted in being bored. And I'm using the word bored for a euphemism for a lot of other things. But the source is a lack of self-motivation as well. But that's still, in my opinion, downstream of being bored. So when you wake up and you say, I'm not looking forward to something, that is still an extension of boredom, because you don't look forward to it. What did I, the thing that I just mentioned, grinding video games. That's boredom. You don't grind a video game if you're not bored. Like, oh, I'm going to play this game and I'm going to love the heck out of it. I mean, there are some trickeries, like mindsets, where you could convince yourself you like grinding, and then it's no longer a meaning that elicits boredom. So that's fair. Like, if you like the grind is no longer associated with boredom. So that's fair. We're just talking about boredom in general. So if you start asking yourself, how many times do you fit the quality of boredom, and how many different types of words you compensate or use frequently, or just saying you're bored? I can think of a few. Apathy. I don't care. That's an extension of boredom. It's a euphemism for boredom. Like, when you go and tell someone, I don't care about you, it means you don't interest me. This is boring. I'm going elsewhere because you bore me. Right? Or, I don't want to do this again. It's such a waste of time. Boredom. There's nothing more interesting about it. It's boring. So you don't want to do it again. So that's my 2 cents for today. All that ties to the whole idea of why is it important to experience something different? Why do you want to find as many ways as possible to try to experience things differently? Because, there are things you love that you have to do again and again and again, and you don't want to fall out of love with them. And it might sound like I'm talking about a person, but it can be more than a person. It could be anything. It could be self-love. Like, when you're bored of yourself, you stop working on yourself. You stop caring about yourself. You don't want to self-improve. You don't want to get better. You don't want to live happier. You become bored with yourself. For example, you want to become a great drummer, and then you realize on YouTube, there's this incredible drummer, and you realize that you're just gonna not be better than that. That's still boredom. You got bored with drumming that you don't want to pursue it anymore because you've already seen all of it. It's like, this is the epitome of drumming. I can't see myself being a different type of drummer or having a different life than this drummer. I already know everything. It's boring. And one of the surefire ways to help with boredom is inducing fear, ironically. So what I mean by that is, it's not fear in a negative way. You remove control. One of the biggest if you see someone who is so bored with life, you have to slap him hard, and not figuratively. You throw them into a situation that they can't possibly know what's going to happen, in a safe and conducive way. Obviously, they will be fearful, they'll be scared, they'll be apprehensive. But what you can do as a support system is that you get them to trust you and be there for them in a manner that allows them to have an experience they can't possibly know what's going to happen. A human being cannot be bored specifically with something that they don't know. They can be fearful. Let's hope that's not the only emotion they have. Fear is often also countered by optimism or hopefulness, or a hope for change and whatnot. So it's all of the above. It's not just fear. And that's like a hardcore intervention. That's exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is what I think people still say in like a professional sense. When dire straits, right? When you are very, very worried, you have to go full stop, which is exposure therapy. Get them to do it anyways, but somehow trying to safely manipulate them to do it in a safe way, not a malicious way. Because I have to say this all the time, because my cynicism comes back all the time to my hyper exposure to all the different ways that you can exploit this, right? Does it make me a terrible person? It's up to the morally just, I suppose, who can evaluate someone on their thoughts. But the internet exposes me to constant cynicism all the time. So I'm willing, and what I'm saying here is I'm admitting to the idea that I'm saying safely manipulating someone, because often the first thought I have is the stuff I talk about could be easily exploited. You can exploit someone in a vulnerable state. And that's happened so often. It's like all over social media. Like it's all over social media. I would even argue that it's all over social media unintentionally. For the person who is unintentionally manipulating people or misinforming people, but with the greatest intent, or like with the kindest intent possible. They're doing their best. It doesn't exonerate them from potentially accidentally misinforming. So that's kind of the idea. But yeah, boredom. Absolutely devastating. If you see someone who spends most of their life, whenever you ask them, how are you? How are you doing today, buddy? Like, what's up, bro? And then they said, no, I don't know what to do. I'm just bored. If you you know, share a camaraderie or love this person as a friend and whatnot. One thing you could possibly change the scope of this person's life is to alleviate that boredom. It also challenges the person, you know, the so-called friend, to understanding how well do you know your friend? Like, can you actually make them less bored? Well, one thing I would say is the thing I have to offer, I like to believe that one tool for someone to strive for, I specifically strive for, is to have a tool that is always accessible, always available to me. It doesn't need a computer. It doesn't need a smartphone. It doesn't even need me to be... it doesn't need anything. It doesn't need money, fuel, and that's communication. And experiences. So, yes, I get it. It's awesome that you can make a, you know, you can play an instrument, or you can sing, you can dance. Those are really great tools too, to keep someone from boredom. Like, hey, you seem a little bored. Let me play you a song, or let me sing you a song. That's so great too. But you know what? I can tell you now, if I was given a room, which I couldn't do way back when I was a teenager, when 20, I can probably talk the whole evening and be relatively, I would say modestly successful at keeping most of the people engaged. And that keeps them from getting bored. It also, if you want to think about it in an inwardly way, you know, like a lot of times, a lot of us are looking for affirmation and ways to build our reputation, or what's in it for me kind of thing, you know, inwardly thinking, what is the incentive for what I just described? Well, you're unforgettable. You always leave an impression. You seem like an approachable person, and all those people will become your social links in any capacity you desire. And that's not manipulation. It's a genuine exercise of a skill you have. You can certainly use those skills as a form of manipulation. Then what happens is you'll probably reach boredom. If you focus inwardly and try to use your skill to manipulate someone, if it is dependent on if the target is being able to be manipulated. Well, when you fail, and you constantly fail, you will enter boredom. But if you're doing it for yourself, like in a way of practice, you are less likely. You can still reach a state of boredom at some point. If you're not actively finding new inspirations to challenge your skills, but that's kind of the idea. What does boredom look like when you reach it? This is also a danger too. Like, I like to focus on the dangers of self, like self-inflicted dangers. When you're bored, you become very self-inflicted. Like, it's often the loss of self-love most of the time. Because you will look inside, it's like, I don't get it. Why am I always bored? Why do I have this problem when no one else seems to have this problem? Right? That kind of thing. It's also the other way too. You will project boredom. What does that look like? Every single internet troll on this planet. What does boredom look like on the internet when it's outwardly projecting? Someone coming in and asking you, why are you playing this dead game? They are bored. Just that example. You'll probably find many, many other examples. YouTube video about someone who's barely doing a squat, first comment, wow, you're not doing a squat correctly. You suck. Boredom. You don't have any... There's nothing else you have to say. You're just projecting your own boredom. Like, you go out of a way to make someone else give up on something, you are projecting your boredom. Like, you have nothing else to look forward to, nothing better to do than to make someone as miserable as you are, whether you know it or not. So some might convince themselves, yeah, you know, making other people miserable is very fun and entertaining. Well, it takes a specific type of mindset and a specific type of person to come to that conclusion. So take it for what it is. You need to project to want to do that. So the next time you read a comment like that, honestly, if you really want to resonate with me, when I read a comment where someone is deliberately being toxic, it doesn't empower them. It only makes me pity them. Or sympathize with them, actually. Like, I just kind of want to know, dude, you must be in a really... I mean, unless you're that really special person, right? And what I mean special, like sociopathic cases. And let's just be real. If you're on the internet, you're probably not sociopathic all that much. Because the internet is a tool to look for self-affirmation. It's a form of escapism. If you're sociopathic, I don't think you're struggling with that need, usually. But if so, you happen to encounter one, it's very apparent if you're the special case. For the most part, though. I don't mean to be sappy, or I am sappy. I'm not denying that I'm sappy. However, I'm also thick-skinned. Like, what I mean by that is a lot of times people would associate going out of a way to empathize with people makes one soft. Like, well, actually, it's the whole reason why I don't get offended by stuff. Because in actuality, it makes me have a better understanding, a greater understanding. Maybe a more, I don't know what the phrase I would use. A different understanding. A different understanding of where that insult's coming from. I mean, there are other indelicate examples I could use from my life, but I don't think this is an appropriate manner to use them. But, you know, say someone makes... I'll let you use your imagination. You know, from over my lifetime, when I was younger, I didn't know how to resolve or handle certain circumstances. And often it's more of the masculine, like misogynistic type. And I'll let you use your imagination on what I mean by the misogynistic type. And no, it's not dealing with a girl. Misogyny comes in, you know, both flavors. It happens, actually, I would even argue misogyny happens innocently and acceptably between men more often than men and women. Like, I understand the popularization of, you know, men unfortunately having abused women, right? That type of misogyny. But one that always flies under the radar all the time, probably because it's acceptable, is misogyny between men. And you can imagine a scenario where when I was younger, I was very scrawny. I was a scrawny kid. I mean, it doesn't help that I look different, right? And often it comes with measuring one's masculinity. And I really didn't have a rebuttal to that. You know, a lot of times You'd be like, this guy just makes me feel bad, but really I'm just afraid of confrontation. Like, I don't want to confront this person. Nowadays, though, again, you can use your imagination what that measure of masculinity might be involving. There are plenty of misogynistic characteristics. So nowadays, if I were ever to make an encounter like that, I'd probably buy that guy a beer and have them tell me why do they value a specific quality of themselves, and do they have any other specific qualities that people like? Because why limit yourself to thinking that I care about how masculine you are, and why anyone cares about how masculine you are compared to me? Because, I mean, the most masculine thing you can do is probably buy your bro a beer, right? At a bar? So, I mean, gonna be real. If you buy that guy a beer, that's certainly a way to break the ice. Just saying. I mean, what's the other alternative? Puff your chest and then throw a swing and a miss? I mean, I'm gonna say this very humbly, but if I'm gonna attack someone, I'm probably gonna kick them really, really hard. There's no punching from me, and I don't just sit around and pretend like I don't know how to defend myself, right? So that's a weird flex, because I don't like being viewed as someone who may be able to physically harm someone. I like to be seen as someone who's incapable of doing that. However, we have to remember that I'm also human, so being human means you can be volatile. I don't ever recommend underestimating. Oh, actually, did I turn this in already? I already did. Last 3 repeatables. There's no ounce of my being I would ever underestimate any human being's ability to be destructive. I think it takes a very, very small, ignorant, prideful person to think that the person you think you're superior to can't destroy your life. Like you're untouchable. That's illogical. If you're a human being of superior stature, then that other human being can very well also be of superior stature. You don't know in what context they can be. So I wouldn't ever exercise the idea like, oh, you're so good that you're immune to the devastation another human being you treated, poorly to ruin your life. It's not fear-mongering. I don't want it to sound, I know it kind of sounds like deterrence. That's coming from a place like there are more, I would say there are more understandable routes to increasing the odds of having a situation like that benefit you, if you only care about yourself, benefiting you, or like me, benefiting both parties. So if someone this is a really tough one. Like say a waiter spilled something on your shirt. Like, oh yeah, sorry. It's like, what would be my first interaction? It was like, first I would communicate to the waiter that's like, yeah, this kind of sucks. But please, I'm not going to die. At least I don't think I'm going to die. Is there any way I can resolve this, in an amicable way, right? So you reach out and you say like, these things happen, dude. These things happen. I'm sure it's okay. I'm sure my company understands that this was an accident. It's not like someone's gonna say like, haha, you suck. The waiter spilled soup on you or something. They're going to sympathize with you. Is it embarrassing? No, it's not. It happens. So what I mean is a lot of times when someone gets like something happens to them, like a waiter clumsily spills something on you, immediately they're trying to save face. From whom? From what? It takes a very, very entitled person to find it non-sympathetic for people around you to feel the same way. Like, what I mean is, what kind of human being or what kind of mindset someone has to be in to think that when a waiter spills something on you, they did it on purpose, you deserve something for an accident, and everyone around you think you're being embarrassed. It takes a very specific mindset if you think about that. Like, if you're worried about being embarrassed, like you got a stain on your shirt because you spilled something on you, I think that is telltale sign of what kind of person that, like, what kind of company that person usually has. Because when a waiter spills something on me, immediately I already know my first concern is to make sure the waiter doesn't feel terrible about themselves, and then that everyone else know that I'm okay. Because I'm not a pity party. I like to alleviate the burden of other people feeling sorry for me because I had an accident. I'll just shake it off. It's you know. And that, my friends, is being sappy with a thick skin. It hasn't ever, like, for me, it's so, it's almost disappointing, like egregiously disappointing most of the time when someone says that, oh yeah, you're always like so concerned with other people's feelings. Why are you empathizing all the time? Like, that makes you soft because you're always gonna let someone go and whatnot. It's like, well, all the circumstances you're thinking pigeonholes a empathetic person to being soft. Like, for example, oh, you're not gonna punish this person for screwing up? It's like, yeah, that angle. But hey, if I don't punish this person from screwing up, I could also be the instrument to helping this person change his life or their life. How is that soft-hearted? And I'm enduring the embarrassment, or the embarrassment that that person is thinking, like, oh yeah, you're so soft because you got embarrassed. It's like, I wasn't even embarrassed. It's like, it takes a really weak person, in fact, ironically, an even thinner skinned person, to think that you can't go beyond that. You can't be a better person. If you're a better person, you're always thicker. So that is, like, I can't even emphasize that. I mean, it's to the point where, you know, some humorous stories that I always exchange is when people are offended for me. I absolutely find it incredibly endearing, but it's also in the back of my mind. I kind of start thinking about, if that person's offended for me, it also means that something about them normalizes being offended easily, right? So there's no moderation there, right? Although I say it in a very endearing way, because it's often an incredibly overly passionate person being worried about me, and I really appreciate that. But at the same time, I can't help but think about, how often does that happen? If something like that happens, like, it can very, very much erode a person's life like that. So yes, overly concerning and sappy people without moderation can lead to fragility, as in you're oversensitive, everything offends you, you start projecting your frustrations, and it's out of a place, you know, extreme behavior. Absolutely, for sure. And it leads to that fragility that most people stereotype. However, with enough practice and confidence, it can be the very reason why you're stoic. So, in my opinion, one of the secret sauces, quote unquote, secret sauces to being born into an Asian culture, I suppose, being born into a Chinese culture that demands, absolutely demands the necessity for stoicism. I don't know how my parents do it. Well, actually, I kind of do. And it's a selective empathy. For me, I achieved what my parents do to create stoicism, and I elaborated by integrating what Americans do very often. So, no, I don't get easily offended. That doesn't mean that I'm that guy who doesn't care about anything. I actually think, to me, the biggest counterintuitive thing is I care about a lot of things, and therefore I'm not offended most of the time. It might sound oxymoronic. The order of operations matter. I develop an empathy in order to understand the most things. And since there are things that I understand, they no longer concern me. Like they no longer worry me because I understand them. It's a big hill to press. However, empathy can lead to that. If you understand how that feels, you no longer have negative feelings or concerns of xenophobia. Like, you keep xenophobia at bay. Like, oh yeah, I don't understand why you like this game. I absolutely hate this game. I just can't stand it. Like, well, that's xenophobia. Like, you don't like it because it's different from what you like. And that becomes an impediment to ever doing anything or empathizing with the other person. It does come with trade-offs, right? If you empathize with a lot of people, then when you're not part of the confrontation, it can be tough. So like when you have two friends fighting, there's a trade-off for that. Someone who is non-empathetic or selectively empathetic, or someone who's biased and pride, would line themselves up with one side or the other, and it would largely resolve a confrontation. Someone's going to lose, someone's going to win. An empathetic person can end up becoming indecisive a lot of times. The idea is you master as much as you can and find a compromise between the two sides. That is far more difficult to reach than just siding with one side. So effectively, if you're into the human condition thing, the idea is you side with one side. It's the least path of resistance, right? So you choose the right side. You don't try to make an enemy of all. So if you're a universal empathizer, here's the irony that I don't feel it needs to be explained, but generally speaking, to the people who are ignorant about this, is the idea that if you're a universal empathizer, if you strive to be sappy and empathize with each other, in order to be happy in life, you have to be thick-skinned. And thick skin comes at a consequence of mastering that very thing. So if you're going around accusing someone who is spending all their time concerning their brains and life about other people, just imagine how hard that is to do every single day and still stay happy. So if you see someone who cares and overly concerned with someone and they're successful and they are happy, I'm willing to bet 9-1 against you that they are far more stoic and thick-skinned than you are. Because when you don't care about things, it's easier. It's just easier. You only have to care about what you think. Granted, a lot of people who concern themselves with other people, they can be fragile because they took on too much. And yes, that would imply that they're fragile. Not because they can't take criticism or overreact or something. It's because they're spending almost all their time doing that. So when you're an arrogant, self-centered, apathetic person who only cares about the people that are close to you, your pool of people you have to care about all the time is like a drop in the ocean. So if you're asking yourself, who is taking up a bigger burden or challenge? It's the person you're criticizing for being weak. Well, I don't know about you, but there's a reason why I would argue, and I agree with you, that people who are self-centered and self-motivated and care about only the people that they care about and like are so much stronger and consistently resilient is because they don't deal with something I feel humans are almost ill-equipped to do. So the next time you call someone who's overly concerned about something and not trying overly concerned and calling them out right away for being fragile and weak, ask them, what do they think they're dealing with? And then ask yourself, after they describe to you what they deal with every day in their head, if you can handle it. I mean, if you say you hate things very easily and you like things very easily, you're probably handling a lot less than someone who likes a lot of things.